Today we are going to go through the process of cleaning the thermal flow sensor and the VeloCheck valve on our discrete VeloBlend systems. First thing you want to do is open up the valve on the back side of the system, which is the valve coming off of the mixing chamber, activation chamber. Make sure that there's no pressure in the system. So you open up this valve, let the water out until you see a bubble come up on the top of the activation chamber. Go ahead and close it after you see the bubble appear. And then come back over to the other side here to the thermal flow sensor port and open up that valve. That valve allows all of your polymer to come out of the tube and come out of the thermal flow assembly. Once you have all of that, you can go ahead and leave that one open and then pull the tube off of the VeloCheck valve. That'll allow a lot more polymer to come out of the bottom, and make sure that that tube is completely empty all the way through the assembly. After that, take a crescent wrench, and this nut should not be that tight because it is an O-ring type of connection. So all you do is just turn it a quarter turn. The rest of it is finger tight. Pull this out, and just as long as there's not a lot of clumping on here, you can take a white cloth or a paper towel and wipe it off and then put it back in. Now if when you pull that out you have a lot of collaboration on the probe, then it might take a little bit more cleaning involved, taking a pipe cleaner and running it through the assembly to get some of the hardened polymer out of the assembly. When you put it back together, finger tight the nut, and then take your crescent wrench and just give it a little snug pull. If you ever have to take the connection of the electrical off, all you do is push up and then turn it, and that'll allow it to loosen up and come off. When putting the thermal flow sensor back in, make sure your electrical connection is pointing to the inlet of the polymer assembly. Be careful when pushing this back, the pins are so you don't fold over any pins or damage any pins inside of the thermal flow sensor, and then tighten your screw up. That's about all it is for the thermal flow sensor. Let's move on to, since you have all the pressure released everywhere, we can move on to the VeloCheck valve. To do that, we okay, good. Again, making sure that there's no pressure inside of the activation chamber. Push down a little bit, pull the pin, give it a little twist, and it should pop right out. And you should have this. So we have the injection coil. We have a spring. And then we have the poppet. And that's pretty much the base parts of this assembly. The poppet is the most important part to get clean, because you want to make sure that there's no collaborations or hardened silicone polymer developing on these two holes here. If there are, you need to really clean it out well. The best way to do that is with hot water. But if you're going to do that with hot water, you need to make sure when you put this back together, it is completely dry. What we like to do is let it sit overnight and naturally dry. You can use compressed air to do this also by blowing into the assembly and blowing this all completely dry. Make sure you have no water in your lines, otherwise it could leave enough residue in there to cause more of a mess when you put it back together. But you want to make sure that this is completely dry, no water on it. When you put it back together, let's put the poppet in first, put the spring in, and put the injection coil kind of gently and twisting and walking it down so you don't pinch that O-ring, and it should stay together just like that when it's all put back together correctly. Then you can take this, making sure that it's completely dry again, wiggle it and walk it to make sure you don't pinch the O-rings that are in the internals. Push it far enough in to get the pin in. Hook up your polymer line and make sure all your valves are closed. So that one's closed and that one's closed. And depending on your system, when you start up the first time after you do all this, you might have to run it a couple times. It might give you a low flow on the polymer alarm occur, but just turn it back or acknowledge the alarms, reset them, and turn it back on, and it should be fine. That concludes our video. Thank you.